The HOA that tried to regulate sunlight. I didn't install solar panels to make a point. I installed them because they made sense. Our neighborhood gets full sun most of the year, long, clear days with barely a cloud in sight. My electric bill had been creeping up steadily, and after running the numbers a few times, solar just worked. The return made sense. The timing made sense. So I did it right. Permits pulled. Engineering plans stamped. HOA notified. I even chose a system designed to be as low profile as possible. Matte black panels. Flush-mounted, nothing sticking up or reflecting like a mirror. The HOA approved it, in writing. At the time, they called it a model for sustainable upgrades in the community. I saved that email. It ended up being the most important piece of paper I owned. For the first few months, everything was fine. A couple of neighbors asked questions. One even asked for the installer's contact information. My system went live, and for the first time in years, my energy bill dropped to something that didn't make me wince. Then the board changed. New president, new members, and one of them, Mark, had opinions. I didn't know him well, but I knew the type. The kind of guy who spoke like every sentence. Was a decision that had already been made. At the first HOA meeting after the election, he pointed at my house during the open forum. "I don't think we should allow people to turn the neighborhood into a solar farm," he said. There was one system. Mine. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone mentioned it had already been approved. Mark nodded like that didn't matter. "We can revisit things," he said. That was the start. The first notice showed up about a week later. Violation, reflective surface causing visual disturbance. I actually laughed when I read it. Then I responded, with the approval letter attached. A few days later, another notice. Violation, aesthetic degradation of community standards. Same response. Same attachment. That's when the tone changed. The fines started. Small at first, 50, then 100, then 250. Each one tied to a slightly different wording of the same complaint. I pushed back harder. I cited state law. Solar access laws are very clear. HOAs can regulate placement within reason, but they cannot make solar installations impractical or prohibit their use. They stopped responding directly. Instead, they got creative. The landscaping crew showed up early one morning. At first, I thought they were working on the HOA's green space behind my property. That area had always been open grass, nothing planted, nothing tall enough to block anything. By the end of the day, there were trees. One row, then another. Within a week, a full line of fast-growing, ornamental trees had been planted along the southern edge of the HOA property, exactly where the sun hits my roof. At first, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was just landscaping. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Then I looked closer. The spacing was wrong. Not just a little off, completely wrong. The trees were planted far too close together. Any landscaper would know that. Their root systems would compete, forcing them outward as they grew. Outward, toward my property, toward my foundation, toward the mounts that anchored my solar system. That's when I stopped guessing and started documenting. I called an arborist. I called a surveyor. I called a lawyer. The arborist spent nearly half a day on site. He walked the entire tree line, measured spacing, checked soil disturbance, and even dug shallow inspection points to look at root direction. His report was not kind. These trees were installed without adherence to standard spacing guidelines. He wrote, "At maturity, root systems will compete and spread laterally, increasing the likelihood of encroachment onto adjacent property." But that wasn't the part that stood out. It was the section about placement. The planting alignment does not correspond with surveyed property boundaries. Instead, it appears the installation crew visually estimated the boundary, line eyeballed placement, resulting in multiple trees being installed beyond the HOA's property limits. That word, eyeballed, came up more than once. He even noted that there were no stakes, markers, or evidence of a proper boundary survey being used during installation. Translation, they didn't bother to check. They just guessed, and they guessed wrong. The survey confirmed it. Several of the trees weren't just close. They were over the line, on my land. That's when things escalated. We filed. The HOA responded through their attorney, insisting the trees were part of a community beautification initiative. That word, beautification, came up a lot. It didn't hold up long. Discovery started, and once it did, it was like pulling on a thread that unraveled the entire sweater. Emails surfaced first. Internal board communications. Planning discussions. Mark's name was everywhere. If we can't force removal, we can make the system ineffective. Another one. Tree line will reduce output significantly. No need to fight statute directly. Then came something even better. The grant. I hadn't thought about it in months, but when my lawyer mentioned it, everything clicked. Mark had applied for the same solar incentive program I used. He didn't just get denied. He got denied because he failed to meet a compliance requirement. I didn't, and that apparently bothered him more than it should have. There were emails complaining about it, about me. He gets approved and now we have to look at it every day? That line made it into court, and it landed exactly the way you'd expect. Then came the planting plan. Yes, they had one. A diagram showing tree placement, angles, growth projections, estimated shading impact. Someone had even highlighted the hours of peak sunlight my system would lose once the trees matured. They didn't just plant trees. They engineered shade. The courtroom went very quiet when that came out. The HOA's attorney tried to pivot, claimed it was all theoretical, that no actual harm had occurred yet. My lawyer slid the production reports across the table. My system output had already dropped. The trees were doing exactly what they were planted to do. The judge took his time. He read everything, twice. Then he set the documents down and looked directly at the HOA table. These trees were not planted for aesthetics, he said. No one responded. They were planted to interfere with a lawful installation. Still nothing. The ruling was decisive. The HOA was ordered to remove every single tree. Not trim them, not relocate them, remove them, at their own expense. They were also ordered to cover damages related to lost energy production, property encroachment, and potential structural impact from root intrusion. Then the state stepped in. Because this wasn't just a civil issue, it was intentional interference with a protected solar energy system. Fines were issued, significant ones. The HOA had to revise its policies to align with solar protection laws. And Mark? He didn't get jail time, but he was removed from the board immediately, quietly, the same way these things always happen. No announcement, just gone. These days, the green space behind my house is empty again, just grass. My panels are back to full output. And the HOA? They don't say much about solar anymore. Turns out, you can't regulate sunlight, and if you try to block it on purpose, even eyeballing the damage gets very expensive.